Show's about to start.
All right. So, welcome to United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. We're back here in Jenny Jump State Park here in Hope, New Jersey. So, while people are filing down from getting parked and at the Rock, I want to go over a couple things for the people who have joined us online. Because, yes, we are live streaming this to both our YouTube and Twitch. So, if you ever can't make it here, you can always check us out on those places. Make sure you like and subscribe to get the notification that we are going live. With that, you can also check us out on our website, uacnj.org. That is where you're going to find a whole host of information, including our member clubs, our upcoming presentations, and presentations we've done in the past. as well as all sorts of information about the telescopes we have on the grounds. In addition, you can also follow us on our socials, our Facebook and Instagram. We generally post fun bits of information on our social media and let you know what the next talk that week that's coming up is, as well as any of our special events that we may have. Now, with that, for the people who are here, if you need to use the bathroom, that is the porta potty to the back and to my left, which is your right. We also have a little gift shop and museum area that you can check out, and I'll be manning after the talk. Unfortunately, I have not yet developed the technology to duplicate myself and be in two places at once. Once they allow me to have that, I will conquer the world. But until then, that being said, when we go to leave here, we are using our headlights. We enjoy keeping all our body parts intact, and I'm sure you do too. So again, headlights, yes, so we don't accidentally run people over. That being said, if we have any flashlights because we want to get around or avoid tripping on things, please do keep those pointed towards the ground. We don't need to add in any additional chance of people getting those lights in their eyes. And with that, our talk tonight is Let's Solve the Fermi Paradox with Dan Kirby. Dan has a bachelor's degree in physics and a master's in computer science and has been an amateur astronomer since his childhood. He joined AAA, which is not the car company, in 2021, and UAC&J in 2022, and has spent many a lonely night here at Jenny Jump, wandering between his stars, much to his wife's dismay. While astronomy is by far Daniel's most passionate hobby, he also enjoys reading, cycling, writing self-balancing personal electric vehicles. And with that, here's Dan Kirby.
Okay. So yeah, the talk tonight was supposed to be with Bill Murray, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. He was busy filming cameos for the next Ant-Man movie. I'm just kidding. He's not that Bill Murray. He's a Bill Murray that we have. But yeah, so the title of tonight's talk is Let's Solve the Fermi Paradox. So we're gonna get into we're going to talk about extraterrestrial life and the search for it. And I will give you a spoiler warning. If you're like me and you have a big stack of science fiction novels that you are waiting to read, and many of them are about making contact with extraterrestrial life, there may be some spoilers in this talk for some of those books. So before we get in, what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to explain the Fermi paradox and some related ideas. Then I have selected 8 solutions to the Fermi paradox for you to choose between. That's right, you are going to choose the solution to the Fermi paradox, and we're going to pick a favorite for the group using a March Madness bracket. So first I'm going to explain the Fermi paradox and related ideas. I'm going to go through some solutions that suggest that human beings are alone in the universe, some solutions that suggest that we are not alone in the universe, and then we're going to do a March Madness style bracket, and we're going to pick one who's the winner for the night. So, part 1, what is the Fermi paradox? So, the Fermi paradox was articulated by Enrico Fermi in 1950. So, Enrico Fermi was an Italian-American physicist. He worked on the atomic bomb. He was a real interesting character. So, Fermi was part of the team that discovered the neutron. And at the time, so the neutrino and the neutron were discovered around the same time. And some member of the press had asked, Mr. Fermi, what's the difference between the neutron that you discovered and the neutron that Wolfgang Pauli discovered? And he said, and being Italian, he said, Wolfgang's neutron is a very tiny neutron, a neutrino. And that's where the name neutrino comes from. So yeah, Fermi was interested in kind of weird ideas. As Kim mentioned, I did a degree in physics. And, when you do a physics degree, one of the things they teach you how to solve is what's called Fermi problems. So if you're not familiar with these kinds of problems, it's sort of like try to figure out how many piano tuners there are in Chicago based on, how often you think a piano has to be tuned, how many households you think there are in Chicago, that kind of thing. Um, the famous one that he actually gave his employees is one day one of his guys hit a coyote with his car on the way into work, and he said, "All right, we're going to figure out how many coyotes there are in the woods based on how often they run into cars." So basically, what Fermi observed in this conversation was that our universe is very large. It contains billions and billions of stars, and we believe probably about as many planets. It is older than we are, and even if you're traveling at a very small fraction of the speed of light, a civilization could potentially explore our entire galaxy in just a few million years, which sounds like a long time on our scale, but compared to the age of the universe is not very much. So therefore, the classically stated Fermi paradox is, where is everybody? Why have the aliens not already landed on Earth? Why don't we live in a province of the galactic empire, right? So now I'm going to talk about the Great Silence, which is a related concept. So Fermi was speaking specifically about the lack of direct physical contact between us and extraterrestrial civilizations. In 1950, this was before radio astronomy really had taken off, and the Great Silence is the later observed result that, when we take our radio telescopes, like the one we have behind the house here at Jenny Jump, and look at the sky, we don't see radio communications from extraterrestrial civilizations. This was mostly observed starting in the 1970s with, Project Ozma and Frank Drake and Carl Sagan. And as stated, we've been searching for decades, and so far we have found no repeatable anomalous signals from outer space. We found a few things that we can't explain, and we found a few things that we couldn't explain, and then later on became things that we could explain, like pulsars. But for as it stands, we haven't seen any of these signals repeat in a way that we can, look at them and say, oh, this is a product of intelligence, and that we can do science on where it's falsifiable. So now I'm going to talk about the Dyson dilemma. So this is another idea. It comes from the middle of the 20th century. So Freeman Dyson was a physicist, and he observed in 1960, if you look over our history, basically civilization demands an ever-increasing quantity of energy. And the only instances we see where our energy consumption drops are basically catastrophic events, right? Like COVID-19, you see, people are driving less and using less energy. A good almost counterexample is the collapse of the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union's collapse, if you look at like that period in global energy consumption, doesn't make a dent. It changed our carbon output because the Soviet agricultural system produced a lot of carbon, but the West just trucked on through in terms of energy consumption. So if you extrapolate this forward, it seems likely that a civilization will eventually need to climb what's called the Kardashev scale and build a Dyson sphere. I'm going to explain the Kardashev scale in the next slide. But basically the idea of a Dyson sphere is that you would want to sort of enclose your star in a structure that would be able to basically be made of solar panels, right? So you could consume all of the energy the star was putting out. So, we look, you're going to see the stars tonight from Jenny Jump. I haven't noticed any of them winking out as their inhabitants, box them up in a Dyson sphere. They're winking out because of light pollution. That's a whole other thing. But so why are they not Dysoning them up? So the Kardashev scale was created by Nikolai Kardashev. He was a Russian astronomer. Very simple. Basically, the idea is that type 1 is when you're using 100% of the energy output of your host planet. Type 2 is when you've got the whole star, so that's the Dyson sphere level. And type 3 is when you've Dysoned up the whole galaxy. We currently, humanity, are somewhere around type 0.7. And the thing that is holding us back from getting from 0.7 to 1 is our reliance on fossil fuels. Because, the sun is depositing a lot of energy on Earth, and we're not using all of it. So I'm also going to introduce you to these two somewhat conflicting rules of thumb that I think are useful when interrogating the question of extraterrestrial life. These are the Copernican principle and the anthropic principle. So the Copernican principle, as you would imagine, was articulated by Nicholas Copernicus, and it basically is the idea that our position in the universe, wherever we are, shouldn't be special. That we should, and this applies both in space and in time, that we should assume we have a random sample of, whatever possible existences there are. The anthropic principle kind of goes in the other direction and says, well, the range of our possible observations is restricted by the requirement that we exist. So our position in space and time must be at least a little special, because it has to be special in the sense that it allows for us to exist. So to give you an example, does it matter that we live on Earth instead of Mars? Well, it seems like it does, because Mars doesn't have, oceans and plate tectonics and all the things that make Earth habitable. Does it matter that Earth has a very large and unusual moon? That might matter, and we'll get into that as we get into the solutions. All right, so part 2, what if we are alone in the universe? So the first solution I'm going to give you is called the Great Filter Hypothesis. So this was conceptualized by Robin Hansen in 1996, who is not an astronomer, he's actually an economist. And basically the observation he made is that in order for us to get to our current industrial civilization here on Earth, we had to pass through a series of difficult milestones, things that may have been unlikely. Perhaps one of these milestones is actually nearly impossible. 99.9% of life forms will not make it past. So some potential great filters that might have happened in our past, right? The emergence of life on Earth, the transition from prokaryotes to eukaryotes. So prokaryotes are simple single-celled organisms, and eukaryotes have like little organelles inside them. And basically, as far as we know, the way that eukaryosis happened was that a prokaryote ate another prokaryote, and then that became like that. The one inside became the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. Then the transition from multicellular life, from eukaryotic life, this is probably not it, because we've actually replicated this very recently in a laboratory experiment, like literally within the last month. And then obviously the emergence of intelligence itself, we could go on. So some potential great filters in our future: nuclear war, climate change, artificial intelligence, a pandemic. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, Dan. Pandemics have existed for all of human history. That's not true. Pandemics are a product of industrial civilization. Epidemics happen in nature, but for a pandemic to happen, we need international travel. We need the ability to, fly from one continent to another to spread the illness around the whole world. And other technological hazards that we might not even be able to think of. Consider, if we were talking about this 100 years ago, I don't think a lot of people would have brought up artificial intelligence as a potential hazard. Okay, so how does the Great Filter actually solve the paradox, right? So there's two options. Either the filter is behind us or it's ahead of us. If the filter is behind us, then we are basically the firstborn civilization. Whatever we pass the filter, and basically the galaxy is empty. We're the only ones in this area of the galaxy, basically. And if it's ahead of us, then that would indicate that civilizations like our own are actually quite typical, but we're all doomed to fall to the Great Filter in the near-ish future. And when I say near-ish future, I mean like the next few million years. So don't get worried about the Great Filter. We have other things to worry about. Yeah. That's true. So that's a Great Filter hypothesis. Now I'm going to talk about the rare earth hypothesis. So this was articulated by Peter Ward in his 2000 book, Rare Earth. You can conceptualize this as an early filter if you want to fit it into the Great Filter model. It's basically suggesting that the conditions that we experience on Earth are rare in the overall cosmos. We orbit a stable, long-lived single star, not in a double star system, and we're in the habitable zone of that star. Our orbit around the galaxy in what is controversially termed the galactic habitable zone. So that's basically the idea that like if we were closer to the core of the galaxy, there would be other stars kind of like coming through frequently, having close encounters, and that could rip us out of orbit. And if we were farther out toward the rim, then we'd be dealing with the problem that the stars out there are much younger and there's not as many heavy elements, because our bodies are made of carbon, and if all you've got is some hydrogen, you're not finding life, right? We have plate tectonics on our planet. We have an unusually large moon, which I mentioned before. In fact, our moon is so large that some people might call us a double planet. I certainly would. And anyway, so since this book came out, exoplanet astronomy has really blown up and has confirmed that our solar system is unusual compared to at least what we're able to see now. Obviously, we're limited by the instrumentation we have, and exoplanet astronomy is fairly young, but that is something that I think points in favor of this solution. One of the obvious issues with this is that it makes the assumption that Earth-like planets are the only possible ones with life. So there's no, conception of maybe you have like an ice moon with some like aquatic critters under the ice or whatever, or you have some like gas creatures in the clouds of a gas giant or something like that. So that's the rare Earth hypothesis. Okay, so what if it's not Earth that's rare, but it's something else that we have? Maybe it's technology or intelligence or civilization itself. Perhaps, life is common in the galaxy, but industrial civilization is not. So by way of analogy here, I'm going to point to the cosmic calendar, which Carl Sagan included in his television show Cosmos, but it was not in the book. It was in the book Broca's Brain, I think. So I've compressed this a little bit, but so if you conceptualize the history of the universe as taking place over the course of one calendar year, and so we say January 1st, midnight, Big Bang, and now is December 31st at 11:59 p.m. or whatever, then life appeared on Earth on September 21st. Eukaryosis happened on November 9th. Multicellular life appeared on December 5th. Dinosaurs show up on Christmas. And on December 31st at 2:24 p.m., we have primitive humans. At 11:44 p.m., we invent fire. At 11:59 and 38 seconds, we build Göbekli Tepe. 10 seconds later, we build the pyramids and Mohenjo-Daro. And then at 11:59:59, Columbus set sail to America. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you look at our own history, industrial civilization is a very small part of even the history of humans. And as we noted in the Great Filter section, industrial civilization actually poses a lot of dire threats to us. And I will note, dinosaurs, they ruled the Earth for millions of years, and they never invented the steam engine, the internet, space travel, or Netflix. All signs of civilization. Okay, so those were the boring ones where there's no aliens. Now let's find the aliens. That's what we came here for, right? Okay, so what if we just don't know where or how to look? So we've been searching for extraterrestrial life for a fairly short period of time, and perhaps our assumptions about extraterrestrial civilizations might be based on our own biases. So this is a map of Mars that was drawn by the astronomer Percival Lowell around the turn of the 20th century. And what you see here on the surface are what he called canals. So at the time, there was an Italian astronomer, Giovanni Schiaparelli, who observed these features on the surface of Mars, and he called them canali, which in Italian can translate either as channel, as in like a natural channel, or canal, as a man-made canal. This was translated into English as canal, and people concluded that there was a civilization on Mars that was building canals to move water from the polar ice caps to their equatorial cities because the planet was drying up. Obviously, there aren't any canals on Mars, and so Carl Sagan actually took these maps that Percival Lowell drew, because he drew them by hand, and he did these over several nights. He spent hours at the telescope, and every time he came out with the same drawing. And so Sagan took these maps and tried to map them to actual surface features on the planet Mars, and to see, is he playing connect the dots here? Like, what's going on? And he found no correlation between the actual surface features on Mars and what Mr. Lowell drew. So the prevailing explanation that people find convincing is that Percival Lowell was drawing the veins in his own eye. Now, I think it's worth noting also that if you think about it, he was doing this at a time period when canal building was rapid and wide scale, right? So, the Suez Canal was going up in this time, the Erie Canal, the Panama Canal. So he was looking for signs of civilization, and he thought canals. So if we were looking for life in outer space now, I guess we should be looking for TikTok dances, right? And then even if there were extraterrestrial civilizations that were signaling us in the radio spectrum, how would we even know what frequency to choose to listen on? So Carl Sagan famously proposed 4.4623 gigahertz, hydrogen times pi. If you ever seen the movie Contact, they're always on about this in that movie. So this is the emission spectrum of natural hydrogen multiplied by pi. So it's like a weird number that would be unlikely to appear in nature. But Frank Drake also proposed 56.8 gigahertz, which is just two other constants multiplied by the frequency of the cosmic microwave background. So, we could sit here and we could come up with all manner of like signals of intelligence that we could be looking for. In a lot of movies or like sci-fi stories, it's all about prime numbers, right? Because prime numbers don't usually appear in nature. But in the 2001: A Space Odyssey, the monolith has proportions 1/4/9, because that's squares. So, we might just not have found the right frequency, right? And then also, as I noted earlier, it's not as though we've never discovered any anomalous signals. It's just we haven't found any that repeated. So that's that solution. Now we're going to go to the spooky one, the dark forest hypothesis. So the dark forest hypothesis was articulated by a scientist and sci-fi writer named David Brin in 1983, but it gets its name, the spooky name, from the second novel in the Three Body Problem series by Cixin Liu, or as he would be called in China, Liu Cixin. You should read all three of these novels. They're all good. I read them all last year. But basically the idea is that, if you look at contact between technologically distant civilizations in our history, for instance, the Columbian Exchange, it can end rather disastrously, right? So maybe the attitude we should take toward extraterrestrial life is one of assuming hostility. But unlike on Earth, there's a vast gulf of time and space between us and the other stars. So it seems unlikely that we're going to see something like an alien invasion. Suppose we get a signal from these aliens that are 20 light years away, and then they launch the invasion fleet at 1% the speed of light. So 200 years later, the invasion fleet arrives. In the meantime, we could have built all sorts of weapons and crazy sci-fi technologies to defeat them. So therefore, the conclusion of the dark forest hypothesis is that the solution is a massive, overwhelming show of force upon first contact using perhaps relativistic weapons. Relativistic weapons, what are those? So yeah, the scariest thing in outer space might not be a Death Star, but just a big chunk of matter traveling at any appreciable fraction of the speed of light. At 99% the speed of light, 1 ton of any matter, but I would presume you'd probably want like a big chunk of metal, would have as much kinetic energy as 10 million Hiroshima bombs. This picture here is not 1,000 kilos of matter. This would probably be like a large asteroid or a small moon. But what is really worrisome about these weapons is that because of the restrictions of the speed of light, suppose there was some enemy that was 100 light years away, and they launched a missile at us going 99% the speed of light, and we even knew where to look, right? We saw it launch. Well, it's going 99% of the speed of light. The light is going 100% the speed of light. It's 100 light years away, so we have 1 year. So basically, they would be impossible to see coming. So that's the dark forest hypothesis. Now let's go to the fun one that's less gloomy but also kind of spooky. The zoo hypothesis. So this was proposed by John Ball in 1973. Basically, the idea is that there are extraterrestrial civilizations. They know about us, and they have declared our planet or our section of the galaxy to be a no-go zone. It is a blockade. Or something, and maybe they come to watch us or whatever. You may be familiar with an example of this hypothesis from science fiction in Star Trek called the Prime Directive. The obvious problem with that in Star Trek is the plot hole of how come no one ever, only the Federation, only the humans have the Prime Directive. The Ferengi and the Klingons, we never see them talk about the Prime Directive. So that's the same problem we have here where, well, why doesn't anyone ever try to run the blockade? Why doesn't anybody come down to try to, hand us the recipe for concentrated dark matter or something? A related concept would be the simulation hypothesis. Maybe the extraterrestrials have put us in some sort of simulation, for whatever purposes. So that's the zoo hypothesis. So this is I think this is, oh no, this is the second to last one. So the stay-at-home civilization hypothesis. So I said early on in the talk that, at an appreciable fraction of the speed of light, crossing interstellar space would you could colonize the galaxy within a matter of millions of years. But let's think about this from the other direction. Let's think about what it would take to go to just our nearest star, right? So space is really big. At the speed of light, it would take 4 years to get to the nearest star, and as far as we know, we cannot go any faster. It also might just be that interstellar colonization, as it were, might be really impractical. So in the novel Aurora, Kim Stanley Robinson articulates this idea that basically life is a planetary phenomenon. So it's likely that any exoplanet we find will either already have life or will basically be a lifeless rock. So if it already has life, that life's probably going to be hostile to us. And if it's a lifeless rock and we wanted to colonize a lifeless rock, we've already got plenty of those in our own solar system. We got Mars, which we think is lifeless. We've got Venus, we've got the asteroids. So why are we, crossing vast interstellar distances just to get a Mars analog, right? And if you look over human history, colonialism and imperialism have been pursued mostly for the purpose of seizing resources. And what other resources would we find in an alien solar system that we don't find in our own? So this picture I chose here is meant to be quite telling. So this is a map of the British Empire in 1902. So the British Empire was the most powerful empire in human history. It took them 400 years to conquer 23% of our planet's population, and then they basically immediately collapsed. And I think the reason I chose this particular map is this is a map of the British Empire's communications system. This is a map of their telegraph lines. So you see they go from Britain across to Canada, across to Australia and New Zealand, across to India, and then down to South Africa, and then back again, right? So if you were the colonial administrator, in Bombay or in Pretoria or Johannesburg, and the prime minister is sending you, your directives, what you're supposed to do, you're basically getting this in real time. If you're the emperor of the Galactic Federation and you're on Earth trying to tell your subject peoples out at Alpha Centauri what to do, that's an 8-year round trip for that message to go through. So it seems questionable whether an interstellar polity could exist, especially given the history of these large empires in our own planet. And also, if it's possible to upload our brains into computers, maybe it would be more interesting to create a simulated reality and do what's called colonizing inward. So basically, like, we could support a larger number of humans, simulated humans, in a smaller space, like on our own planet, maybe powered by one of those big Dyson spheres we learned about. This is kind of the flip of the zoo hypothesis. This is like where the aliens are putting themselves in the zoo. But yeah, so those are our options that I've selected for you. These are not all of the solutions to the Fermi paradox, but these are the ones. Okay. These are not all the potential solutions, but these are ones that I selected because they're relatively popular. And sorry, one more. The really fun one. They're already here, right? So you might be sitting here thinking, Dan, you're missing the forest for the trees. We've already got like all these UFOs zipping around. All those weird videos that the Navy released, and we got Roswell and Area 51 and all that stuff. And maybe the world's governments have already made contact with the extraterrestrials, and they're just hiding this information from us because they don't want to cause a panic. Yeah, a few problems with that idea. For some reason, the most convincing UFO footage seems to have originated before the dawn of the smartphone era. UFO sightings and alien abductions, crop circles that don't seem to be evenly distributed around the world. They tend to cluster in industrialized nations that have aliens represented in pop culture. UFO sightings are also not evenly distributed in time. Most UFO sightings have occurred since the 1940s. And government conspiracies have a history of leaking. Remember Watergate? So why are they being so tight-lipped about the aliens? I always, whenever Area 51 comes up, I always say, well, I mean, the official story is that they use Area 51 to test a bunch of secret spy planes, like the U-2, the F-117 Nighthawk, the Blackbird, SR-71 Blackbird. We know those planes exist because we've seen pictures of them and we've seen them, in combat. Did they have a flying saucer parked next to the U-2? Like, was it Tuesdays and Thursdays we do flying saucers, Mondays and Fridays we do the regular planes? But yeah, so those are our options, and now it's time for the bracket. Kim, you're gonna help me with this?
Yep. So basically, we have a bracket to see what by vote, what people might think is the winning solution to the Fermi paradox. So online, when you go through the bracket, you're just going to type in the number. You have them numbered, right?
Yeah, they're all numbered, and this is a random
Perfect.
assortment. I didn't pick which ones are facing off against which, and we're not.
Yeah. Okay, Dan.
You're not picking. You're not picking your favorite. You're picking which of these two you like better.
All right. And so what we'll do is for the people here, when he calls out the number and tells you what it is, you're going to clap or cheer. For the people online, you're going to type that number, just so that I can also keep track of the online votes because I can't hear you cheer in your own house.
So,
All right. First one.
Yeah, which do you like better, the rare Earth hypothesis or we don't know where to look?
So what numbers are those?
There's number 1 and number 8.
So one cheer or clap. 8 cheer or clap.
All right.
8 wins for that one.
That is a clear win. Okay.
Online concurs.
All right. So stay-at-home civilizations versus they're already here.
And that is numbers 5 and 4. So
Yes.
5 is stay at home. Clap or cheer. 4. They're already here.
There's a lot of fans of they're already here. I was thinking this one would win.
Let's see.
Do we want to see? Let's see what the online audience thinks.
I got a couple for 4 online with that they're already here. I mean, come on, we have a couple. I think we have a couple of them who've joined here.
I think we're going with they're already here. All right, we're going with they're already here.
Perfect.
Okay. Great filter versus zoo hypothesis.
So for the online chat, number 3 is great filter. Clap or cheer.
Zoo hypothesis. We're all in a big zoo.
And that's number 6. Uh-oh, are we going to be tied again?
It seems close. I feel like it was more enthusiastic for great filter.
Come on, more enthusiasm. Number 3, which is great filter. Number 6, zoo hypothesis. Our online have also gone with number 6.
All right, we're going with zoo hypothesis. That one is pretty fun. Okay, so rare technology, civilization, and intelligence, which is number 7, versus the spooky one, dark forest, number 2.
So 7, rare technology. Clap or cheer. I heard some crickets.
Yeah, and spooky dark forest.
Number 2.
That
2 wins it despite our online audience's best best
what was that?
efforts.
Yeah, don't spoil the book. But yeah, no, I that it makes sense because we are in this isn't a dark forest yet, but wait for the sun to go down, we'll be in a dark forest.
All right,
Okay.
so we're on
Next
to
round.
round 2. So number 8, we don't know how or where to look.
And number 4, they're already here. I feel like that's how or where to look. I'm tipping it to how or where to look.
So yeah, that seems
I'm
8 again.
I'm sorry, Agent Mulder. I wanted to believe.
All
Okay,
right,
so,
so
now,
number 6, zoo hypothesis. Clap or cheer.
nobody likes the zoo
Or
hypothesis.
crickets. All right, number 2, dark forest. Everything's scary.
All right, so now for the final face-off, I was not expecting these results, but it is between we don't know how or where to look and dark forest.
We know nothing. Clap or cheer. All right. Number 2. Everything's scary.
I think that was we don't know how or where to look, but I
I
kind
don't
of want to
know.
see what
I
the
think
online
it's
audience
tied.
thinks.
Let's online. Can you help me out? 2 or
Yeah.
8? Unfortunately, as it gets closer, the 8s start running together, so I don't know. That's the problem with online chat. It's now just spammed with numbers.
I
All right.
think
So let's try here again.
Okay,
Let's
yeah,
see if
one
you
more
can
time.
break it. So, number 8, we know nothing. 14 doesn't help me online chat. Number 2, Dark Forest, everything's scary.
I think it's number 8.
Yeah, number 8, we know nothing.
So that's our no, not a -1. So that's our winner for tonight. So if that's not your favorite solution, that's fine. We all have our favorites, and the real answer, like the real truth, is that we don't know the solution to the Fermi paradox. But I want to thank you all for coming with me on this journey of exploring solutions.
So before we run away, we are
yeah.
going to have a question and answer
Oh, yeah.
session because people were asking questions that they want answered.
Yeah, but so before I wrap up, I want to give you some other further resources, additional reading, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how this talk came to be. So the book that I used the most when writing this talk was the book by Stephen Webb, If the Universe is Teeming with Aliens, Where is Everybody? 75 Solutions to the Fermi Paradox. Another book that I like about this topic is Aliens, the World's Leading Experts on the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence by Jim Al-Khalili. Isaac Arthur is a YouTuber, has a series on the Fermi Paradox, which has a lot of interesting content. Isaac Arthur is very long-winded, even more than me. So if you get into his videos, it's kind of a kick back and relax kind of series. And I have a QR code here that you can scan. It'll give you all these links to these resources, and we can put that link in the YouTube description later. But the actual genesis of this talk was I went to the talk Why We Might Be Alone by Professor David Kipping, who's an astronomer at Columbia, in November last year. And the talk is really good. The link is in this QR. If you want to watch it, you can watch a talk that I was in the audience of, which I guess is kind of cool. And I asked a question about a particular solution, and he said, yeah, I mean, that fits the model, that would work, but you can buy books that are like 101 solutions to the Fermi paradox. So I went home and I went on Amazon and I searched 101 solutions to the Fermi paradox, and I found Stephen Webb's book, and that's basically where I got the idea of, like, wouldn't it be interesting to just see like what people think is like a believable solution. But yeah, so before we leave you tonight, I want to leave us on this quote from Arthur C. Clarke, who's one of my favorite sci-fi authors. 2 possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. And yeah, so that's all for me. We can go to Q&A.
So we are going to go to Q&A. First things first, because I did see a couple of you here that are snuck in during the presentation, whether you are up on the rock enjoying the sunset and views or not. So safety briefing. When we leave, we are using our headlights because we don't like getting run over. I think everyone can agree. No running people over. People are not worth 10 points if you hit them. However, if we're using flashlights to help us, guide our steps, or we've dropped our keys, because I've done that, we keep our flashlights pointed towards the ground, just because we don't need to unnecessarily blind people. If you have questions, do ask. There's many people around. Most of them wear name tags. I keep forgetting mine, as people have pointed out to me multiple times. But they'll be more than happy to answer your questions. We do have telescopes open, so you will be able to look through them tonight.
And please boss us around and tell us what you want to look at.
Politely.
Yeah.
Please and thank you are magic words.
Yeah.
If you need to use a bathroom, porta potty in the back, towards my left, your right, and we also have a gift shop museum area. So first, for the people here, when you ask your question, you're going to raise your hand, and wave it about and keep it up until I get to you, so you can speak the question into the microphone. And I'm going to start this off with one of our online questions. Does UACNJ participate in the program that searches for radio signals from aliens?
So we have a SETI dish. It's not currently being used. If anyone's interested in searching for aliens and wants to join the club and get that thing out of mothballs, I would be happy to help. I mean, I think, someone here will be happy to help.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is beyond my level of technical expertise. I can run a register. I cannot run a radio dish. I could learn. I don't want to. That being said, like he said, we had it running at one point, but really it currently just lacks a person to really run and front that sort of project.
I think it would be a productive use of that equipment to point it at Sagittarius and see if we see the WOW signal come back, which is a famous signal from.
So I
outer
already
space.
see a question from our in-person audience. You can still ask.
Is SETI still using random people's CPUs for searching, or is that over?
That's they discontinued that. I think I want to say in like 2017 or 18, but yes, they're not. They're the SETI Institute. They're still active. They're still looking for aliens, but they're doing other stuff now.
All right. So our next online question, and I'm going to guess. Well, actually, I'm not going to guess because I asked the question. This is related to the Dyson people. Are they related to the vacuum company?
It's pretty. If you think about it, it's apropos, but it's just a complete coincidence. My last name is the name of a famous vacuum company, but I have no relation.
If I mean you.
Kirby, the vacuum cleaner.
The tiny pink ball and.
That too.
Mario
Also, the guy who
Super-
created the Marvel the Marvel Universe, Jack Kirby.
So many, and you're related to none of them.
I'm related to none of them. No, yeah.
For shame. Right, we have another question over here.
Sorry, kind of boring question. Are the slides available online somewhere?
Oh, I mean, I could probably post them somewhere.
I was wondering if you saw an old Star Trek episode where there's silicon-based life forms instead of carbon. I was wondering how plausible you thought that was.
I don't remember that episode. Was that in TNG? Really? Okay. I thought you were going to ask about the TNG episode where they find a Dyson sphere, but so I haven't seen that episode, but in terms of silicon-based life, I think is very interesting because if you look at the way silicon chemically behaves, it is very similar to carbon. So it makes sense that people have questioned whether there could be silicon-based life. But I think probably the biggest impediment to silicon, and there's also the concept of carbon-silicon hybrid life forms. But I think the biggest impediment is we are carbon-based. We consume oxygen from the atmosphere, and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Silicon dioxide is like sand. So like it would be a little bit difficult, if you're walking around sort of leaving a trail of sand everywhere as opposed to just, breathing out an exhaust gas. I think that might be an impediment to life.
if we're going off of the dark forest, everything's scary, is that where the Sandman came from?
Which sand? You mean, are you talking about sand people from Star Wars? There's a lot of
No, I'm talking about like the thing that goes bump in your nut in the night.
Maybe.
Like,
could be.
Eats your dreams, sort of Sandman.
It could that guy could be an alien. You don't know. There could be some aliens here right now.
Right.
A few of them run in those observatories.
The next question is, how much material is it estimated to make a Dyson sphere around our sun?
So I've seen different estimates for this. I think what I have seen is that it would probably mean dismantling at least one planet, and that would probably be Jupiter because it's the biggest one. So we would basically have to consume, a significant portion of the material of the solar system to make our own Dyson.
Oh, there, I see ya.
So we often assume that any aliens we find would be similar to us, 2 arms, 2 legs, carbon-based life. given the entire realm of possibilities, do you think there's a more likely way they might show up? Could they be made of different stuff, look different, behave different?
I think it is. I think it is overwhelmingly likely that they would be inscrutably different. I think that the like if you think about like if you've ever had difficulty finding common ground with your fellow human beings who maybe come from different countries or just have different values than you do, imagine how difficult it would be to find sort of commonalities with extraterrestrials. So I don't think that like the alternative view that would say that actually it should look like Star Trek and everybody should be like humans with some stuff glued to their face is basically that there's only sort of one evolutionary solution to a particular niche. So like if you look at like winged animals, right? We have birds and we have bats, and we're pretty sure they basically evolved separately. And there's a few examples in nature of like evolution sort of finding the same thing multiple ways. So there is some plausibility to the idea that extraterrestrials could actually look a bit like us, but I tend to lean toward the thinking that they probably would not only be very different from us, but they would be different in ways that like I don't know that we could have a conversation with them.
All right. So the next question is, why would you say that the moon should technically count as a planet? What is the distinction between the two?
So typically the usual like logic that's applied to say, what's a planet and what's a moon is that a moon is said to be like the smaller body, obviously, and it orbits around the larger body. But if your Newtonian mechanics, you can't whenever you have two bodies in motion, they both affect one another. So the moon and the Earth actually both revolve around a common point, which is called the barycenter, and the barycenter of the Earth-Moon system is inside the skin of the Earth. It's actually quite close to the core of the Earth. So
and now I think the Earth is a Danish with a nice strawberry filling.
So a double planet you would conceptualize as sort of like if you had two objects that were the same size and they orbited like one point in the middle, that would be a double planet, right? So like Pluto, which I will not get into the debate over whether it's a planet because we have enough of those conversations up here. But Pluto and its largest moon, Charon, they orbit a common barycenter that's between them. So whatever Pluto is, whether it's a planet or not, it's a double whatever that thing is. But one of the weaknesses with this definition is that if you're saying that the Earth-Moon system is a planet and moon because the moon is, the barycenter is inside the Earth, then if the moon moves farther away, which it is currently doing, then eventually that barycenter can move outside. And so in a few million, years or whatever, we're going to be a double planet, but right now we're not. Isaac Asimov had an alternative definition. He suggested that we should define it based on whether the primary body, which in the Earth-Moon example is the Earth, or the Sun is the dominant gravitational influence. So if you go by that, then the Earth and Moon are a double planet because you can see this in the Moon's orbit. So the Moon doesn't ever do like a little loop. It's always falling toward the Sun. There are other moons in the solar system that do that as well that Asimov didn't know about at the time. So I tend to lean toward the thing of like, if you look at the moon, it looks like a planet to me, and if it were alone here without the Earth, you would think of it as a planet. So that's my argument for we're a double planet.
Questions out here? Oh, there's one.
I've heard it suggested recently that while interstellar travel might be impossible for humans, we could conceivably create artificial intelligence and send it out into the universe.
Right.
Is that something that you think is in our future and potentially in some alien civilization's future or past?
Yeah,
and
so
there could be artificial aliens out there floating in the universe looking for places to investigate.
I think that's very likely. So the concept was originally called a von Neumann probe. John von Neumann was the first person to propose this idea, and the variant of it where you mix it with the dark forest hypothesis is called the Berserker probe. So that's where you have this artificial intelligence that goes explores the universe and murders everything it finds.
They had a Star Trek episode
there
about
has
that.
To be.
I think that's what Voyager turned in.
Well, Voyager no.
Well, Voyager was based on Voyager, and someone out there got it and fixed it incorrectly, and
it came
got
back
very
to try
angry.
to merge with us. But I think that is a likely outcome. I think that you would have it would extend the longevity, obviously, of that civilization. But I think it's worth noting that the question of whether our life, like in the brain uploading, right? Like if we put our brains into computers, we're still here, right? We're still a civilization. If we are replaced by our robot overlords and they, take over and they colonize the galaxy, it's still an extraterrestrial civilization. So it doesn't remove the Fermi paradox. It actually arguably makes it a little bit worse because we've now conceptualized a way that we can break past the, human limitations of our own lifespan.
Right. So I'm going to say to the people online, do get those questions in just because I do have a couple more online. Was there another question out here? All right, so I'm going to go to the next online question. Where are we sure he didn't say cannoli, like he wanted dessert after astronomy?
I mean, I believe that's possible. I mean, I'm also Italian American. I enjoy cannolis, so leave the gun, leave the phaser, take the cannoli.
Take me to your later. Here's a plate of cannoli. Not what I asked, but okay. Right. Again, hand up because it is starting to get dark and I'm staring at a screen, so sometimes I become night blind. And by sometimes I mean every time I become night blind. So the next online question is, do they even need to be that big? We launched the DART mission that had a noticeable effect and that wasn't the size of a moon.
Well, yeah. So the specific back of the envelope calculation that I was doing there, for destroying the Earth with a relativistic weapon was based around the question of what would take to literally break all the chemical bonds and send like basically what you saw in the picture where the Earth is blown to smithereens. It would not to destroy all life on Earth. You would not need that much mass.
A couple of school buses, maybe.
School. That's probably could be pretty bad, but that might only be more of a local catastrophe. Like if you look at say like Chicxulub, the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, that thing was obviously not going at relativistic velocity, but it was only like the size of Manhattan. So if you think of like a big like a mountain at a relativistic speed, it could be enough to destroy all life on Earth, but it would not destroy the Earth. The planet would still be there, but you wouldn't. We might not be.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they were trying to get at.
Yeah.
Okay, everything's dead. We've got out the intergalactic can of Raid.
Yeah.
But it's still usable, damaged but usable. We get a lot of nice appliances that way. Hey, in this economy, you do what you gotta. Any questions? We got another one.
This might be getting too in the weeds, but do you think a Dyson sphere is more probable than a Dyson swarm, given the additional complexities of creating a vast megastructure compared to, say, floating solar panels?
There's no such thing as too in the weeds for me. I think that a Dyson swarm is the more likely thing that you would see, because so basically the difficulty with a Dyson sphere is that as our current conception of material science is. We don't have any metal that's gonna make a sphere the size of the Earth's orbital circumference, right? So the strain, like the stresses and strains, would break anything that we currently have. A swarm would be more like you have these little tiny sort of satellites that they're all in their own orbits and they're coordinated so they don't smack into each other, like Starlink. And it seems likely that you would see a swarm before you would see a sphere, right? Because so there's a star, a relatively nearby star that a few years ago people got really excited because we got some anomalous data that people were saying, this star is dimming periodically, which is kind of what you would expect to see if somebody was constructing a Dyson swarm, right? Like there's stuff going up that's in between us and the star. turned out that the most likely explanation was interstellar dust, or a bit of dust that was in orbit. But I mean, it's something we could conceivably detect. There is a long history of us finding things that we think are aliens and then finding out that they are not aliens. But usually that process leads us to learning new things about astronomy or physics. So it is a worthwhile mistake to make.
I feel like eventually we're going to be so excited to find aliens, and we're going to be like, yes, an alien, we love you. And they're going to be like, oh, God, it's an introvert, or it's an extrovert. All us introverts are like, yeah, that's a mood. Right, so it looks like our online questions have ended. Were there any more last-minute questions from our people here? All right, so I want to thank you guys again for joining us. Do check us out on our website, uacnj.org. You'll find all sorts of fun information, including what our next talk is going to be. And that's actually the first Saturday of the month, so that's going to be Lonnie with What's Up in the June sky. I don't know why it took me so long to remember what month it is. Soon. But regardless, you guys have a good night. Be safe, and like I said, do ask questions, and we'd love to see them.
And don't forget to drop some change in the donation jar.